Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. Axon was started almost 100 years ago out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. It's that same passion that drives them today. With a vision for a better experience for both farmer and dealer, they set out to create a better way to move more iron. When you partner with Axon, you get immediate access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. Axon carries all major brands and sizes of tires, wheels, and tracks. From custom colors and sizes to fully customized wheels, you can have the solution for virtually any problem today's farmer is trying to solve. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Markets with Chip Nellinger. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com, and TractorZoom, delivering insights. If you're looking for a great place to see what's going on in the auction market and be able to track trends and see what the upcoming auction inventory looks like, check out TractorZoom and go over to ironcomps.com. And that will get you the information you're looking for. If you like what you see, use Moving Iron at checkout, and you'll get a nice little discount. Chip Nellinger is with Blue Reef Agri-Marketing, and he is kind enough to come on once a week to talk about what's going on in the market. And a lot of stuff going on here today, Chip. We got a couple things. One, we got this massive blast of cold air that's coming down out of the north there, and got some concerns what it might do to some winter kill for some wheat. We also have got a big report out this week for February, which typically isn't a big deal, but with all the fireworks that we've seen from the USDA here over the course of the past couple of reports, this report could have a pretty big effect on what we see in the marketplace.
Yeah, this you hit the nail on the head. Usually the February report's pretty much a ho-hum affair and doesn't really move the market. This one, as big as the demand has been and as strong as exports have been, a lot of people obviously in the marketplace, with the market rallying strongly into the report, are expecting a cut in carryout, both corn and beans, due to increasing demand, particularly on the export side. So, the case now is we got to see that change in movement from the USDA. The market's expecting it. The price action's telling you that. So we're setting ourselves up for a potential volatile day, whether the USDA, moves demand higher, how much they move demand higher. They're also going to update world numbers, so that's going to move the market. And you mentioned the weather, here brutally cold in areas, sub-zero temperatures in a lot of portions of the Midwest and plains. Is that going to do anything to the winter wheat? There's some arguments on that. There's some snow cover in some areas that might help, insulate some of that wheat. But some of that we just won't know, for a while until this thing comes out of dormancy. But the point being with the wheat market is there's a lot of bullish things bubbling under the surface with that crop as well. It just might take a little while to uncover all that. Number one, did we damage any wheat with this cold weather? Are we going to get some more moisture into spring when we need it? How's the, Russia-Ukraine crop going to come out of dormancy? Russia is, said they're going to put some sort of mechanism in for, not necessarily a ban, but to tax exports. And so, a lot of stuff working there on the wheat market. And, that kind of falls in the environment where corn has its own bullish case and maybe getting more bullish by the day, depending on, how high the USDA raises these exports. So going to be a very interesting day here today with that report. I think we also get some numbers out of CONAB, which is kind of the, if you want to call it the equivalent of the USDA in Brazil. They're going to come out with their crop estimate this morning as well. So that's going to be closely watched. I think they're about 4 to 5% complete with bean harvest in Brazil. That's a little bit behind pace, but it is picking up steam slowly but surely. And so a lot of moving parts in there as always, but we definitely don't have a slow winter market to talk about here. And this thing could gain a lot of volatility depending on what the USDA says here. That comes out at 11 a.m. Central here this morning.
Yeah, so that's going to be a big one to watch. Yesterday, the corn and beans had just an incredible run up. Both of them finished up pretty well high up in the teens. I think beans were up almost a little over 20. But as you take a look at that swing from yesterday, how much of that do you feel is guys already kind of baking some stuff into this report, and how much do you feel like there was actually some play there that was driving the market?
Yeah, that new contract highs in corn yesterday. Beans are well under contract highs, but in its own right, beans are $1 off of the lows from a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So we're seeing some big swings in here. Can it continue? Sure. I think as you get to these levels and, you're approaching some historic levels on the corn market where we've only been a couple times in history, that being 2008 and then again in 2012, which was the drought year. And this is an entirely different type situation where you kind of have a mix, right? We had a pretty big crop here, but it's more about demand, obviously, from China, and then, maybe a little bit of drought in South America because of their growing season, maybe going to curtail back some of their production potential. So this thing still has some legs. You got to feed a bull market, bullish news every day and every week to keep it going. So, I think we open the door up here. If USDA doesn't increase demand as much as expected, maybe some disappointment and a little bit of profit taking and start this whole process over again where you fall back to a level that the commercials start buying it and, just adds to that choppy volatility. But this thing is pretty historic at this point as far as the move we've seen. There's absolutely no one that would have told you, we'd be knocking on the door of $6 corn. In fact, some areas with strong basis, I saw this morning, the St. Louis River Market, which is one of the strongest basis markets in the country, has $6 old crop corn, cash corn, and $5 spots in for new crop cash corn. And, just levels you haven't seen for a long, long time, many, many years. And no one would have predicted that. That's part of the reason that these things happen. It wasn't anybody, 5-6 months ago, market thought we were going to have a 4 billion bushel carry out and sub $3 corn. Here we are knocking on the door of $6. So unprecedented. And this thing's going to take on a pretty wild tone. I think that's usually how these things resolve themselves. It isn't with a whimper and you go up and you hit $6 and you just go on a slow grind. I mean, you uncover some massive wild volatility, and you haven't even begun to talk about the acreage battle we've got coming up. After this February report, the market's going to shift its attention to what kind of acreage battle we're setting up, how many corn acres we're going to plant, how many bean acres, what's spring weather going to be like. Plenty of things that are really going to make for a pretty volatile roller coaster ride here over the next few months.
Yep, that's a fair statement to make there. There's the volatility is all over the place. If you look at all the commodities across the board, all of them are fighting for acres this coming planting season. Whether you're talking about cotton, whether you're talking about corn or beans or whatever that might be, there's plenty of a battle there between the commodities, which one who's going to get the most acres. So right now it looks like beans are going to be the winner just based on kind of how things are shaping up as far as price goes.
Well, on paper they are. To me, I've been surprised though. Starting kind of over the weekend and earlier this week, started to see some private estimates and surveys, and corn was garnering more of the pie there than what I would have expected. So there's some surveys saying maybe 4 to 5 million more corn acres. Quietly, the cotton market has been screaming higher, so it's not going to go away unnoticed and without making people scratch their head in the South saying, hey, should we continue to plant the cotton acres that we've been planting? So this thing's shaping up to be a real interesting spring. And then it all comes down to Mother Nature anyway.
Right.
And what kind of spring we're going to get. Historically, if it's an early spring, we tend to pick up corn acres. I guess you got to bet on an early spring. We've had about 3 or 4 in a row. Arguably, they've been on the wet side, some of the wettest ever, actually. And if you're a betting man, you got to probably say we're going to normalize this thing and have a normal early spring, and that would maybe trend towards more corn acres. But it's going to be very interesting into spring, and then you got to play the whole growing season. Are we going to get enough rain? Is it going to get hot? Is it going to get dry? A lot of people, on the weather side of the equation, pointing out the drought map that is very dry in many areas, and in fact, has more drought areas showing up on the drought map now than we did this time in 2012. I'm not saying there's going to be a drought. I'd probably bet the other way because it's been so well publicized, but it doesn't mean you won't have a scare at some point down the road here in June, July, August. So we've got a lot of fun and games ahead of us. This is going to be a real treacherous ride, I'm afraid.
Yep. All right, let's bounce down and talk about what's going on in South America. They went from being some fairly dry growing conditions to now it's so wet they're having a hard time getting crops planted. I guess as you take a look at that, how much is that weather pattern that we see, or that weather situation that we see in South America right now, especially in Brazil? Argentina seems like it's kind of the status quo, nothing's much changed there. But I guess as you take a look at those 2 regions that have a big effect on what's going on in the world as far as grain markets go, what's your thoughts there? And then is that weather pattern playing into what we're seeing happen now with our crop prices?
Yeah, so they've fought La Nina. That probably is going to be something that affects our market, our weather into spring as well. I don't think that's turned much. And they've followed, a typical pattern that during a La Nina year, that is, they struggle with dry weather. They've certainly seen their fair share of dry weather. Now it's turned a little bit too wet in some areas of Argentina, so their harvest is delayed a little bit. And that's going to push back and kind of domino into a delayed start to their second crop, corn. They have a pretty large, usually about a 2.5 billion bushel second crop of corn down in Brazil that they typically export about 2/3 of that crop into the world market. So it's very definitely the next, say, 90 days going to affect the corn market, how that crop goes in the ground and what weather they get. Argentina has, you said, a little bit normalized. I agree with that, but they are starting to dry out a little bit.
Right.
And they're a little bit further behind on their season than Brazil. So it's kind of coming into their, kind of like July, August timeframe where they need to start seeing some better rains, and it's starting to dry out for them a little bit. So that's a little bit of a concern as they finish out their crop down there. With all that being said, and all the struggles that Brazil's had, there's still a lot of private estimates in the 133, 134 million metric ton crop size down there, and that's a massive crop. That'd still be a record. Some of that's acres. They increased, 4 to 5% on their planted acres, but to have the weather that they've had and the dry pockets that they've had, and still have a 133, 134 crop, if they realize that, it's going to be just mind-boggling how large that crop is. Again, we're going to get some updates this morning, from CONAB down there as to what that is, and then the USDA is going to put their own estimate out. So that can change and will change, but right now it still looks like they've gotten through that dry weather that they've had in pretty good shape, but yet, early on in harvest, so that number can change pretty dramatically and will affect the market if we do see some changes there. But still very much a weather market from South America, and will be on their second crop corn as you get even into the March-April time frame. It's going to become very critical. They get the rest of their harvest on beans done and get that corn crop planted, and then how the weather treats them into March and April is going to be key to the corn market.
Yeah, okay, so let's jump over and talk about hogs for a minute. Hogs have had a pretty good run here of late, a lot of exports. Looks like the Philippines are looking at bringing in some more imports of hogs. They did have a little bout of African swine fever that went through that area, but I guess as you take a look at the hog market, It seems like it gets kicked around a lot, but it does have some good runs. So I guess as you take a look at that particular marketplace, what's your thoughts there, and how do you see this week shaping up for the hog market?
Yeah, the hog market's, at least in the deferred, acting really well. We've got a lot of things going there, and sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire. China said that they're 90+% back to normal numbers on their hog herd. Just not sure if that is believable at this point. There's too much news out there, still fighting African swine fever. Of course, the massive buying of corn and beans would indicate that they are still building that up and rebuilding stockpiles there. But, pretty good exports still. You'd think if they've rebuilt their hog herd, they'd slow down on U.S. pork imports, and they haven't yet. and so, sometimes, like I said, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's also some talk out here in the U.S. herd of, PRRS and some disease issues there that could affect, later this spring and into early summer. And so, the hog market looks good. It's responding to these higher corn and meal prices as it normally does. The deferreds are taking off, making new highs. I think things look good. I don't think they're straight up. You're knocking on the door of $90 or slightly over in some of these summer month hogs. I'm not going to be the one to tell you we're going to 100 or 105 in hogs, but I think all the makings are there for a good summer market in hogs. Now, obviously, producers are going to be fighting increasing feed costs, so we need to have higher prices to offset some of that, but I think things look good in the hog market, especially the deferreds making new highs. I think, not a believer yet that China's fixed all their problems, and the longer those big sales of U.S. Pork products into China continue, the probably the more bullish that gets out into the summer months for hogs.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the cattle market now. The cattle market has had a fairly decent run. Looks like the headline in Pro Farmer this morning is bulls maintain the upper hand in cattle futures through product markets. Through the product market. So I guess you take a look at there and see what's going on in that. There's a lot of momentum there that wasn't there even 3 weeks ago. So I guess talk about what you see happening in the cattle marketplace.
Yeah, we're slowly, we've got kind of a battle going on. We just slowly improved the cash market here, but the futures market had some good fun buying, and the futures market's well ahead of the cash market. Now we're into delivery. The February contracts, starting to converge with cash, but you got that April contract out there that was, 124 and change yesterday, and we sold off pretty hard into the close. So you've got, a big head start on the April live cattle futures to where cash is. We need to see cash, over the next month and a half improve more. So that's kind of the battle, at least between now and April. But I think the deferred live cattle are a lot like hogs. The $5 plus corn prices are starting to filter through, and you're seeing some buying interest in those deferreds. And I think they look good longer term. Historically, when you see high feed costs, the cost of deferred or the price of deferred live cattle rise up to meet that. Doesn't mean producers are going to make a lot of money necessarily because of the higher costs, but generally you get to at least break even and a chance to make some money on some of those deferred. So I think in the short run here, you're going to see some more volatility because the April contract is so far premium to where the cash market is. Box beef has been on a tear. It's cooled off a little bit, but $30-some higher in basically 6 weeks since the start of the new year. Good demand. We sold 7,000 metric tons of U.S. Beef to China last week. That's one of the bigger sales we've had in a while, and they've consistently been there every week in at least some amount. So I think that's a good sign too. So, you get people back out, into restaurants. There's more and more restaurants opening. There's this pent-up demand. I think things look good out into summer. But again, we may have a little bit of a bumpy ride in the short run here, say between now and April 1st, because of the big premium that that April futures already have to where the cash market is. Cash market could rally $6-8 and, maybe not affect that April contract much because it's, trading that much above where the cash market is currently. So interesting, 6 weeks ahead of us, but I think longer term things are looking brighter and brighter for our livestock markets in general out into summer.
Starting to look like that way, Chip. Good stuff as usual. If folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what it is you guys do at Blue Reef Agri-Marketing, and also maybe have some questions about a plan or maybe tweaking a plan, because as the way these markets are moving right now and all the different moving parts that we see coming at us right now, there are plenty of reasons why the plan you made in January may not be the plan you need to have going into March here, going into plant season. So if folks want to reach out to you and talk to you about that a little bit, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, best way is just call our office. It's 309-550-7213. Be happy to talk to you, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this thing's changing rapidly daily, so you need to A, have a plan, and B, be able to adjust that plan and execute it when the time's right. So we'd be happy to talk to you and chat about that plan.
Right on. Well, I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you're going to find the latest editions of the Moving Iron Podcast. Also, the Moving Iron blog will be posted there as well. Also, go over to MovingIronLLC.com, another great place to see everything that's going on with Moving Iron Podcast and the Moving Iron Summit that happens in September 15th through the 17th in Nashville, Tennessee. You want to see what Chip looks like? Check out the Moving Iron Podcast market contributors, and you'll be able to see Chip with his bio there and all the good stuff he's got going on there. So check out the Dryline Farmer Podcast. Good friends of mine named Brent and Landon do that, and it's a good, entertaining podcast. You're gonna like what you have there. So with that, I am Casey Seymour, and with Chip Nellinger, let's go move some iron, folks. Out. You want to have a meaningful competitive advantage to help sell more equipment. Whether you represent the sales, parts, or management department of an implement dealership, there's a surprising amount of complexity when it comes to tire, wheel, and track technology. Let Axon worry about that so you can get back to supporting your customers. Axon has leveraged years of experience to create a streamlined process that gives you a proven path to help today's grower and sell more equipment. The roots of their organization go back almost 100 years to the invention of the rubber tractor tire. Supporting agriculture is the number one driver of Axon, from product development through sales and service. To find more or become an Axon dealer, head over to agmarkets.com.
Moving higher in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.